Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going over all the new spoilers that were spoiled today, yesterday, over the weekend, all the sweet new rares, some of the uncommon, some infinite combos to go over. So let's jump right into it with the first card here from Father to Son. 2 mana for sorcery, search your library for a vehicle card, reveal it, put it into your hand. If this spell is cast from your graveyard, you put that card onto the battlefield directly instead. And it's got flashback for 7. So this card on level 1 is just sort of a tutor for a vehicle, and there are some vehicles. When I'm thinking about this in the context of standard combos in particular, Boommobile, Head Shredder, there's some kind of janky combos that are involved with those cards, and this could help those kind of combos be a bit more redundant if there's a particular vehicle that you are looking for in your deck that your deck relies on. There are quite a few vehicles obviously now because of Aether Drift and older sets. You can kind of go through and look and see if your deck would benefit from that. You could have sort of a tutor package, but if you have a combo like the Head Shredder combos or Boommobile combos that relies on it, this could be nice for redundancy. However, I think on level 2, you really kind of try to flash this back and put a vehicle directly into play. That could be pretty powerful as well. Um, Now you could again use these cards or any other vehicle that you want to put directly into play, or the flashback cost itself, which is 7, which is pretty high. Um, but there are some other cards here that you could use, like the Songcrafter Mage or this new Human Wizard for 3 mana that lets you flashback an instant or sorcery. So you can both cast these from the graveyard. Songcrafter Mage, I think, is better, though it would be a kind of like a 4-color here. But if you cast this on 2, or if it was in your graveyard somehow, you played the Solemncrafter Mage on 4, you could use its ability. It has 3 power, so you can pay for the 1 colorless, pay the 4 mana, and then get something, a vehicle, and put it directly into play. The best one I could figure out in standard is the Valor's Flagship. Let me know in the comments below if there's any other ones you can think about. Older formats, there's probably Parhelion, things like that are better, but in standard, the flagship would probably be pretty decent. It also has crew 3, so then the Songcrafter Mage you could use to start crewing it and attacking as early as turn 5. That seems decent as well. But yeah, any other uses for this card, let me know in the comments below. Seems like a decent tutor, somebody to just kind of keep in mind, and maybe a way to kind of cheat in um, powerful vehicles. Of course, if we get more powerful vehicles printed in future sets, always something to kind of keep in mind with this card as well. Okay, let's go to this new legend, the Joshua, Phoenix's Dominant, a 3 mana for a 3/4, and it says when it enters, discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. And now, on its face value, you kind of want to evaluate this card based on that mostly. It does have a flip side, but it is 5 mana to flip it. And then the backside is a 4/4 flying lifelink. The first 2 chapters are do 2 damage to each opponent, and then the last one is return any number of target creature cards with total mana value 6 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, exile it, and then return it back to the battlefield. So you can kind of flip it back into Joshua. Obviously, the backside gives you a lot of value, some damage to your opponent. You could particularly attack for 4, gain 4 life on the following turn, and then you can reanimate something pretty big or a combination of a bunch of small things. However, I don't feel like the backside is going to be too relevant all that often. The biggest downside of all these cards, there's quite a few of them. They're like legends that you can pay a bunch of mana to flip. Is that if your opponent has a removal spell up for them or a bounce spell or something, and you go for the activation, they can just respond to it, I believe, by just killing or bouncing your guy, and then you don't even get the backside. So you just spent all that mana for nothing, really. So I think you really have to evaluate it in the context of the front side, and it's a decent card, I would say. 3 mana for a 3/4 that discards and draws 2 is certainly playable in standard, and we have lots of kind of payoffs for that. The Monument of Endurance, reanimating Oculus, or just filling up the graveyard for the Oculus. Helping Hand, you can Helping Hand this back. Um, you know, Maybe this makes it in sort of the Jeskai Oculus deck or Boros Monuments decks. Both are decent decks on their own, but this could add some additional value to that. And then kind of the flip side is sort of like, bonus text. If you know your opponent doesn't have any removal that they're holding up, and you have extra mana, it can be pretty nice kind of late game to flip this around and potentially get a huge creature into play and a creature back from the graveyard. I mean, you could in the last chapter, you could reanimate like 2 Oculuses with this. So that's pretty powerful if you're able to do that, or a 6-drop, something like that. Um, but in the context of that deck, you could maybe get like 2 creatures, 2 pretty relevant creatures back if you're missing out, things like that. So I don't know. I think this has a shot at standard, and kind of fitting into the one of those decks, and just kind of a nice sort of way of just discarding more cards and filling your graveyard, um, for reanimator type style deck. Okay, let's move on to the fire crystal, which is so we got all 4 of the crystals. This each color has one of them, and they revealed the black one. Check out my video for the first day of spoilers when they revealed that one, for the thoughts on the black crystal. But got the red, the green, the blue, and the white today. So we'll talk about all of those. And the first one here is the fire crystal, the red one. So they're all 4 mana. They all reduce the cost of this color by 1, for the spells that you cast of that color, and then have some additional bonuses and like a tap ability. So the red one gives all your creatures haste, and then 6 mana to create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. You sacrifice at the beginning of next end step. So decently powerful abilities here. Giving all your creatures haste can be quite powerful, and reducing the cost of things can be quite powerful. And then also creating token copies is a powerful ability. Problem with kind of all of these is 4 mana is quite a lot to play a crystal and to expect to not die, basically because they don't really affect the board. Um, that much is, an ask in standard, especially if you're playing competitive standard. You probably will die to an aggro deck, most likely, if they will kill you on turn 4. So you kind of really have to build your deck around these and make sure you're really getting some value out of it. You can also ramp into it, or play removal spells. Obviously, build your deck so that you survive the early game. But just kind of keep in mind that the kind of one of the problems with these cards is they don't really affect the board right away. And giving all the creatures haste is kind of no exception. It doesn't necessarily affect the board. So, but it is interesting. Like on level 1 with this card, I think you're going to play cards that you want the cost reduction for. Like Trumpeted Carnosaur would be kind of nice because giving that haste is pretty powerful. You could discover into another creature and that has haste. Or there's like the Carnosaur loops with clones. This could go into that maybe, and then the ability to create another token copy of Carnosaur is pretty powerful as well. Overlord also quite powerful with this. I believe it reduces the impending cost of the overlords too. I believe. So but being able to go Fire Crystal into turn 5 Overlord and then get its trigger to 4 damage, swing right away for more damage, and then in subsequent turns be able to create more copies of it that can do 4 and then uh, attack right away. That would end the game very quickly. So maybe that's powerful enough to justify playing this card. The other brew that I have going in my head here is with a Stormscale Scion deck, to kind of use the cost reduction here, with a bunch of treasure makers in standard that you can kind of net the mana but generate storm with it. So like the Grabby Giants, Adventure Ability, or Charming Scoundrel, Ancestors Aid. Maybe there's some other cards that you can kind of build up your storm count that you can think of, and then play Stormskull Scion, and all the tokens will have haste and swing in for the win. Might be a little too janky, might be a little too slow, but maybe something to consider. I will probably try brewing around this, but that's kind of what's on my mind with the Fire Crystal. Yeah, let me know in the comments below any other ideas with this one, because I think this one is one of the more powerful crystals. Got the green one coming up, so the Earth Crystal, which is going to 4 mana, reduces the green cost of green spells, and then it says if one or more +1/+1 counters will be put on a creature you control twice that many +1/+1 counters are put onto it. So that's like doubling the counters is pretty powerful. That's different from some of like the hardened scales, which I believe add an additional one. Doubling is powerful, and then the 6 mana ability tap is distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among one or two target creatures you control. And then the first ability again would kind of work with that. So it would put essentially you're distributing 4 counters. You can put like 2 on 1 or 4 on 2 on 2, 4 on 1, something like that. So this is an interesting one. Pretty nice with like X spells that add counters. Like the Goldvein Hydra is pretty sweet. Like if you played this on 4, you could play the Hydra for X is 5, right? And then it would come to play with 10 +1/+1 counters on it. Attack for 10. That'd be pretty powerful, pretty decent. And then like Valgavoss Onslaught also puts a bunch of counters, and it's kind of nice to have cost reduction because it's a big X spell you can kind of use this to ramp into and put a ton of counters on all of your manifests. Um, so maybe that's worth it. I have a janky brew going in my head with Slime Against Humanity with this card. I don't know. It sounds pretty terrible, but it doubles all your slimes and makes them bigger and makes them cost less. So if you play, you can play this and you can play like it only costs 2 mana. You could play like two slimes the following turn. Both of them would be doubled in their power and toughness, and then I don't know, maybe win that way somehow, pump them up. I always try to figure out if that card could ever be good, but doesn't quite seem like it is. But maybe this is the card that makes it good. Anyways, Earth Crystal, pretty cool one. Let me know in the comments below any other ideas with this one, but seems like a fun one for sure. And then the blue one is interesting. We got the Water Crystal. Very cool. By the way, I love the art on these crystals. They're very flavorful and really cool art here. So, 4 mana, blue spells cost less, and then if opponent would mill one or more cards, they mill that many cards plus 4 instead. And then 6 mana to tap each opponent mills cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. So kind of cool. It can let um, you can mill your opponent additional cards here, and I don't know exactly how to use this one. This one, I was like, well, there's some like cheap effects because you kind of want to have a bunch of different effects that mill them. So then each time that they mill, say if they only mill one card, then it would actually mill 5 cards. It doesn't say that it applies only once a turn, so you could do this multiple times, like with the Scrabbling Skull Crab. If you played a bunch of enchantments, and you have that, and they mill 2, each one would actually mill 6. You could mill them out pretty quickly. Or the Scavenger's Talent, maybe on level 2 here would be pretty decent. You could mill them out for a bunch. It would be essentially like 6 cards each time, so you'd have to sacrifice. I mean, sacrifice 10 permanents. That would be what 60 cards. So you would have to. That is not the easiest thing to do necessarily, but that is a kind of cool, interesting combination. Things like disturbing conversion, things that say each player mills. This would mill them additional cards, or the veteran ice climber we have that ping that could basically get them for 5 every turn. So maybe this goes into like a mill deck. Again, the 6 mana ability too will get added for additional ones for each card in your hand. So yeah, I don't know. Seems like it could be interesting in a mill deck. On older formats, there's a card, Mesmeric Orb, which I think is quite good with this. Um, whenever it says whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. So if you have Mesmeric Orb and then you play the Water Crystal, you pass. If your opponent untaps, say 5 permanents, right, they're going to mill 5 from the orb, and then 5 times 4, 20. So that's 25 cards they would mill. So that would mill them out pretty quickly with those 2 cards in play. That would be kind of funny. I don't know if that's quite good enough. I mean, it's kind of 4 mana might just be too expensive for anything in older formats, but something to consider. The Mesmeric Orb just create a ton of instances of mill. So an interesting card. Yeah, let me know again in the comments any other ideas for this one. Seems like a cool crystal. And then the white one here, the Wind Crystal. This 4 mana, white spells cost less, and if you gain life, you gain twice as much life, and then 6 mana creatures you control gain flying and lifelink until end of turn. This one I thought was kind of the weakest of all of them, but could be wrong. I'm not really sure what the uses are. The only card I could think of that would be really cool with this is like White Sun's Twilight, because it would double the life gain, and the cost reduction is pretty nice here. So if you played this on 4, you could White Sun's Twilight for 4. Although you really want to for 5, I believe. Yeah, so you could do it a turn earlier because usually it's like 7 mana to do this. But you could do it say on turn 6 with the Wind Crystal out, or if you had other ramp, you could do it sooner, of course. But you would gain double that life essentially. So if X was 5, you gain 10 life, and then you make that many might creature tokens, and then you could use the 6 mana ability to give all the might tokens flying and lifelink to basically keep yourself alive and kill your opponent pretty quickly. So I thought there was some cool synergy with those 2 cards. But overall, I couldn't really think of like a real good use for this card off the top of my head. But the ability to gain twice so much life is powerful. Cost reduction, good. But this just kind of seems like a little bit too expensive for these effects, in my opinion. But again, let me know in the comments below. Okay, let's go to the Summon Titan. So this is a enchantment saga creature here. 5 mana for 7/7 reach and trample. And on mode 1, Saga Chapter 1, you mill 5 cards, and then next turn you return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And then until end of your turn, another target creature you control gets trample and plus X, where X is the number of lands you control. So some powerful abilities on this guy. Lumra, I believe that's what's called, that returns all your lands when it comes to play, is 6 mana. So this is a mana cheaper than that to get that sort of effect. So if you're kind of like hard casting it, um, that's, you can kind of ramp into this potentially. So the ability to get all your lands back can be game winning if you again have like desert lands or ping lands or just a bunch of landfall abilities, things like that. But the Terra magical adept I thought was pretty nice synergy with this as well, because it itself will start milling you and could find the summon, because the summon itself is an enchantment. And then you could play the summon on 5 and then return all the lands that were milled. So maybe you're just playing it more of in a mill deck with a bunch of deserts and trying to ping your opponent out like that. I don't know. Seems like an interesting card. It does sort of like, again, die to, say if your opponent has go for throw, you play this, you mill 5, and they go for throw it. That's a pretty bad exchange unless there's something you're really using your graveyard for. But if you get to sort of untap with it, then the ability is quite powerful. So an interesting card. Something I'll have to think about more of. The last ability to is powerful to pump something else up, and then you get to attack in theory the next turn. So, um, yeah, let me know any ideas for this one as well. Maybe again, landfall strategies too. I didn't necessarily add that to the slide, but that's something that could be useful with this. But again, maybe a bit too slow. Okay, let's go to Edgar, the king of Figuro, uh, which is 6 mana for a legendary human artificer noble, 4/5, and when it enters, you draw a card for each artifact you control. So a powerful effect and an okay body, so kind of affects the board, gives you a bunch of cards back, and two-headed coin. The first time you flip one or more coins each turn, those coins come up heads, and you win those flips. I don't think there's any coin flipping in standard, so that really is only for like commander and older formats that have coin flips. But I do have some ideas for that. In standard, as far as standard card is concerned, this card could be decent in like artifact ramp deck, like with the Iron Crag, Tinker's Tote, Simulacrum Synthesizer. All of those can create a bunch of artifacts and draw you a ton of cards and give you a body on the board. So it is a powerful effect. Kind of cute with encroaching mycosynth too, that turns all your things into artifacts. So basically, every permanent you have, you draw a card, including Edgar itself would be an artifact. So that would be, could draw you tons of cards if that's what you're in the market for. Um, so interesting and powerful effect. Maybe just too expensive for standard, but I don't know. We'll see. And then we've got the coin flipping ability here with Ralzeric, the ultimate here. The -7, flip 5 coins, take an extra turn. After this one, for each coin that comes up heads, so basically you'd win all those flips. Um, I believe that's how it works. Uh, yeah, they come with heads, and you win those flips. Okay, yeah. So you would win all those flips. So you'd basically take 5 extra turns, probably enough to win the game. And then Yursi here, basically winning all the flips. It says, let's see, flip that many coins, and for each win, for each flip you win, draw a card. For each flip you lose, it does 2 damage to you. And if you won 5 flips this way, you can cast spells from your hand this turn without paying the mana cost. So basically, you could get omniscience. Essentially, that's the card I'm thinking of. Omniscience in play for that turn, winning all of the flips. So something cute with that. I don't know. The coin flipping aspect maybe isn't that important, but maybe there's some other coin flipping cards I'm not too familiar with that could be even better with this. But definitely a cool, fun, interesting card for sure. All right, let's go to Goenova the Ancient Calamity, which is 4 mana for 1/5. Legendary creature is an alien. Ooh, the truth is out there. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to this creature's power and up to one other target creature, and the creature becomes a mutant in addition to its other types. And then whenever mutant you control dies during your turn, draw cards equal to its power. So definitely works with like pump effects, giant growth, or any other abilities that pump your whole team or pump this guy, because you want to have this have high power, and then you want your creatures that want to die to have high power as well. So pumping your team is pretty good with pump effects in general with this creature. The other thing I was thinking of is like ley line of transformation would be kind of cute, to just turn all your creatures into mutants, um, including this itself. It only starts with one power, but if you had this and ley line naming mutants, whenever any creature you control dies, you draw cards equal to its power. That could potentially draw you a lot of cards. Um, and you could, I don't know, kind of go off with that, some combos going on there. So something to kind of think about potentially. There's are some a few cards that I thought were just nice synergy in general. The Rock Crust Rakshasa with this. If you had that out, you play this, put the +1/+1 counter on it, turn it into a mutant attack. It will die because it has decayed. Its power is 6. You draw 6. Not bad. Just those two cards together. Urbas Forge, kind of cute too. You can kind of stack the triggers here so that you get the token, and then can you actually do that? Actually, I don't know if that 100% works. Maybe you can't do that with the forge, because do you have to choose a target when it goes on the stack? I'm not sure. Anyways, maybe it works with this forge, or maybe not. I thought it might, with Urbaz Forge. Anything that kind of sacrifice a creature over and over again. Um, I was thinking you get the token, you put the counter on it, and then draw a bunch of cards every turn. Could be interesting. Maybe that doesn't quite work. Let me know in the comments below. But an interesting card for sure. Yeah, so that's Goenova. Let's move on to some infinite combo potential here. Some uncommons. The Opu UFO. Is that how you say this? Which is 2 mana for, speaking of aliens, a 0/4, and you can put a tap to put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. It's got flying and 3 mana until end of turn. Its base power becomes equal to the number of towns you control. So this is a town payoff card, which is interesting because we don't have many of those. I think this may be only like the second card that's mentioned towns, although we got this whole cycle of town cards here, like Adventures in Starry Town, decent cards. And then the tap adventure lands. I thought the white one would be interesting here because it could, if this was in the graveyard, it died earlier, when it killed it, you could use that land to return it back and then play it as a town, pump its power even more. I don't know, some synergy there. Um, but I think to use its first ability, there is a bounce land that we have, the Bounce Desert, the Arid Archway in Standard. You can basically use that to trigger landfall every turn. However, if you have this guy out, you could do that twice every turn because it would come back to your hand, put it into play, tap it to put it into play, and then for your land drop, put it into play, just keep bouncing it back to your hand. It can also be used to ramp, if you have extra lands in your hand, and the archway is kind of nice to make sure you always have some lands back in your hand, to ramp with this. So maybe there's some interesting synergy there. I mean, there are some pretty decent landfall cards, like the new Chocobo cards. We're getting, Iridescent Vine Lasher. It's pretty good to get a bunch of landfall triggers. Ping your opponent, kill your opponent, with a giant Chocobo, something like that. And even in older formats, there is an infinite combo with the UFO here, using the retreat to Coralheim, which is 3 mana, and it says whenever a land enters the battlefield, you can scry or you can tap or untap target creature. So you can see if you have a bounce land and you have this UFO, you can tap that to put the bounce land into play. It'll trigger the retreat, which will let you untap the UFO, return the land to your hand, and then tap it again. Keep doing it over and over again, which will give you infinite landfall, basically. And if you have anything with landfall, such as the Vine Lasher, there's a bunch of cards that you could use with landfall. It would give you the win with this, so the milling crabs and things like that. So yeah, infinite combo in Pioneer, I believe. So cool UFO card, got some potential, I think, in Standard and older formats. Okay, let's go to uh, I don't know how to pronounce this. The Gourmet Chef here, Kina, which is 3 mana for a 2/3. And if one or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a 1/1 green frog creature token are created instead. 2 to sacrifice a frog, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Interesting card. I mean, if you can get this to create a frog token every turn, that's pretty decent. I things like Voice the Victory or the Sinkhole Surveyor, Sentinel. All those kind of create tokens every turn just without any mana sink. So if you had both of those in play and you're creating extra frog tokens every turn, that's pretty powerful. Not bad. But on level 2, there is an infinite combo, kind of janky in standard with this, with Leyline Transformation and Essence of um, Orthodoxy. Leyline, again, turns any of your creatures, all your creatures, into a certain type. So if you name Phyrexian with this, and then the Essence says, when it or another Phyrexian enters the battlefield under your control, you incubate 2. So basically all 3 of these cards in play. When you play the Essence, it creates a incubate token that triggers the Kina to make a frog, and then the frog is a Phyrexian, so that triggers the Essence, which makes then incubate token, which triggers the Kina, and go in an infinite loop. Problem is, none of these are May abilities, so this does actually like break the game if you do this. So you need something else to, a removal spell, a bounce spell, or something that like triggers whenever a creature comes into play that does damage to your opponent. Any of those abilities would actually end the game, because I believe it would just end in a draw. I don't really know how this would work on Arena. Would you just time out, and then you could pass the turn? I'm not sure, but yeah. So you do need some other card to intervene in this to actually win the game with the infinite tokens, but it does make infinite tokens. Okay, and then this last rare land. So again, another rare town that we got here, the red one, probably the best of the towns that we've gotten so far. Um, enters tapped, adds a red, but the adventure is an instant here for 3 mana to create a 0/1 black wizard token. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, the token deals 1 damage to each opponent. So some additional value on the land, which is always nice. Maybe you would just play this sort of in the blue-red prowess deck that we got, because it itself is an instant, so it triggers prowess if you cast the adventure, and then it gives you a token that really benefits off of other non-creature spells, Opt and Storm Chaser's Talent, and all the basically many of the cards in the deck pinging your opponent with that. However, it is, a tap land. I don't know if that would be worth it in an aggro deck like that. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. Do you think this would see play in blue red prowess or not? Um, I'm kind of leaning toward no, because kind of the problem with this, with all of these adventure lands, is that neither side is like particularly good. Like you wouldn't play a tap land, uh, just like a tapped mountain, obviously. That's pretty bad value. And the left side 3 mana, it's okay, but you probably wouldn't ever play just that card. And getting an additional land drop off of it, I don't know. Doesn't seem like that worth it, but the deck does have some stuff they can do with extra mana, like in the Storm Chaser's Talent loops they can do. But I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what you think about it. On the other level of this card, you're getting a wizard, which is relevant to some cards already. We've got Kuja, the Circle of Power, which really wants you to have as many wizards in play as possible. So maybe you would play this in more of a wizard strategy, and having that extra wizard really matters. Um, so yeah, something to consider as well with this card. And it also kind of gives you the 4th mana for these cards as well. And in older formats, we kind of got Indomitable Creativity, Transmogrify, things like that. That could maybe this see show up in having a land that makes a token is, powerful, and helps, with your deck building, because you don't want to have any other creatures or artifacts that the Indomitable Creativity can hit or Transmogrify can hit. And having a land that can make a token, and also would kind of ping your opponent if you cast them on it, would be useful. Okay, and then last up, a few uncommons here to end. Side quest, play Blitz Ball. All right. 3 mana for enchantment. At the beginning of combat in your turn, target creature gets +2 power, and then at the end of combat, if a player was dealt 6 or more combat damage, you flip it over, and then attach it to a creature, and it's an equipment that gives +2 power and double strike, equipped for 3. The only the reason I pointed out this card is maybe this could be decent in sort of Valiant decks and the mouse decks, being able to trigger Valiant every turn, pump up your creatures, and it's really not too hard to deal 6 combat damage. If you had, say, the curve of Heartfire Hero into Challenger, into play this, it triggers Prowess, right? You target your Heartfire Hero, puts a +1/+1 counter on it. Now it has 4 power. You attack for 7. flip it over, and then equip it to either one of them, and then you can use the equipment to move it around to keep triggering Valiant. Could be decent. Not that the deck needs any more help, but potentially this could see play, I suppose, in that kind of deck. And then lastly, this Adelbert Steiner, 2 mana for a 2/1 legendary human knight with lifelink, and it gets +1/+1 for each equipment you control. So again, they're really trying to push this equipment theme here. Um, but the reason I thought this card was decent is because we do have like Leyline Axe and some other decent cheap equipment, like the Dragonfire Blade, that you could play out on turn 0, turn 1, and then play this. Like, if this guy was, say, like a 2 mana 4/3, and then it kind of scales up throughout the game with lifelink. I mean, heavy lifelink is the only reason it's actually pretty good, because there's so many aggro decks in the meta. But if you're just playing 2 mana for like a 4/3 lifelink, that's a pretty good deal. We also are getting like a bunch of job select equipment in this set, so we'll see. Maybe this is more of a limited card, but I think it has a shot in potentially the equipment deck, and maybe more of a sideboard card against aggro decks, but seems decent as well. Okay, so that's basically all the cards that we've got for the last couple of days and over the weekend. Let me know in the comments below any thoughts or combos that I missed, any cool ideas with these new cards. Really enjoying Final Fantasy preview season here. Some really interesting designs. Some of them are, very much designed, I think, for Commander, but I think for Standard, and some interesting combos. I've got a whole list of sweet combos that I want to try out already, but let me know what your thoughts are, any cool ideas that you have for any of these cards or any of the spoilers so far. We got another week or so, or two, I think the end of next week, we'll get the full set revealed. So keep going with this. But yeah, hope you're enjoying the videos. And thanks so much for the support. I put a little bit more effort into this video, trying to make the editing and transitions and animations a little more intriguing. So let me know if you enjoyed the video and any ideas how to improve it. Always happy to hear feedback. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.